Okay, so it's now time to start writing some code. It's important for the naming in throughout the project, for there to be a naming convention that it's followed by whoever's engineering the enterprise server database, which is this side. If there's a different person programming B3 controllers or ASPs or any of the new IP controllers, or doing any script programming or functional block programming, that person should coordinate with this person that's engineering the structured word database for the naming to be the same. And then Christian doing the graphics should also be coordinating with these other two people so that they all use the same names. This is simply the name that we're giving these points in here. This is how we would declare variables that when it's time to bind points between the database in structureware and the declared variables in the script program, the names will be the same. So this is how this would be done. In script. Okay, so why, if we can declare our variable names, essentially we can declare our variables, name our variables, why in this manner? I could have continued on and I could have done AB3, AB4, instead of devoting one complete line to declaring one single variable declaration. So in here, a numeric is the data type, likely to be 32 bits. Input is the type of binding that it's going to be associated with this program in structureware. So are we going to write data from structureware into the program, or are we going to read data from the program into from structureware in structureware from the program? So you could in theory have put all the numerics here like that. Why is that not, I believe, the best way, and why I think you should probably always try to enforce this, is because when it's time to print, you can just print this here, and you will have a really nice stacked column of the different data types, which, by the way, this is wrong. This shouldn't be, should be a string. The different data types and the direction of the structureware binding, the relationship between structureware and the program for each variable, and So what did we just do? We just, as you can see, we declared 8 variables. This is another nice thing about devoting one line for every variable declaration. You now get to see exactly how many variables you have, whereas if you had done that, it would be more difficult to see. So this means that the program got compiled into bytecode from we'll call this source code, and every time it gets the source code gets compiled into bytecode, the program gets checked for syntax. So if I do this, we failed on line 8. Syntax error, unexpected token, KD. So a token is a single continuous string of characters. That is a token. White spaces break tokens. Essentially, that is what the syntax error is, and that's one type of error that occurs in programs. So now that we have gone and declared variables in a syntactically correct manner, those binding variables show up here on this table. You can now go ahead and convert this from float to Boolean. Datetime will stay as a datetime, and we can convert this into an int. I'm not sure if we have an integer here. Nope, we do not have an integer, and I am certain we do not have a multi-state. So yes, this would need to be numeric. Now, understand how the data types that conform to this program editing tool, this script editing tool, do not necessarily map exactly to the data type specified by the structure-aware software solution. See how this type is not an analog, it's an enum. And we can look at the properties for this enum. However, even the Boolean, which is a digital type value, here's the type. That's the data type. Here's the type, timestamp value. Here's a type, analog value, and multi-state value. However, the program only sees numerics. And once you've declared them all as numeric, now you get to get a little more detailed for the types that did not map very well over. So your multi-state does not need to be a float, doesn't have to take as much memory as a float type would take, because floats can have decimals, and you're probably looking at 32 bytes, 64 bytes of memory per float variable, whereas the int is only 32, and if you have a short int, you're probably looking at only 16 bytes of memory. And same thing with this binary value. It defaulted to a float when we declared it here as numeric. Here as numeric, as a numeric output. However, when we come here and we turn it into a Boolean, now we just specified a more specific type of data type than this declaration. So what should we do now? So now that we've saved, we can see how our bindings got affected by that, and see how all these new binding references got created in the bindings editor. So if we come here now and right click on the test program object, and no, we do not want to do that. If you edit bindings, now this is where it's important to reduce time in engineering, that you keep the naming convention as accurate between all parties of this solution deployment operation the same, because when you now drag this over and you drop it, it says that no bindings can be matched because I was doing this the wrong way. I'm trying to bind from test to test, so that was wrong. So you grab this and you say drop here, and automatically resolved every binding on the structure where to the program based on the program's variable names. And now all your bindings automatically get created. Now if you had not followed this convention and you had just named these points however you wanted, so what happens now, it's so if we now come here and go back to the edit bindings and we get rid of this guy here, if we again bring here and drop it here, oh boy, we got all these bindings again. The reason this shows up is because you've already bound that path that got resolved here, but realize how AV1 is missing now. That's because the name in the program no longer matches the point name or value name instruction where. So that's pretty important, because when you're talking about binding hundreds of points in many different controllers, and then you're also talking about following the same process for the graphics, this could really take a long time if you had to do every single one binding like this instead of dragging the whole folder containing perhaps 100 points and resolving all points at the same time, because you were organized and coordinated and communicated between all parties involved.